Hello and a warm welcome to Special Report. On the show over the next 30 minutes, we take you through the scale of devastation from the huge earthquake that struck the Himalayan nation of Nepal on April 25th. The Black Saturday, as a reference goes. Death toll is rising each day and some of the grim figures are likely to get even worse as hopes of rescuing any more survivors diminish every hour. Heartbreaking scenes of suffering and loss are playing out across this shell-shocked nation as it reels from its deadliest natural disaster in more than 8 years. Take a look at this report.
Life changed for the Himalayan country of Nepal on April 25th when the earth shook on a scale of 7.9 Richter, killing thousands of people and destroying millions of homes, with the numbers still rising. The deadly earthquake triggered a scary avalanche on the Mount Everest, which buried part of mountain's base camp, which was full of mountaineers who began their journey for the start of the main climbing season.
Ice shelf, and it must have just released. We saw it hit, it kind of hits wood level, and then it just shot right back up. And then I saw, so I told the group to get down. It was like 4,000 feet of snow just kind of coming, and there's nowhere to run.
One of the worst earthquakes that Nepal has faced over the last 80 years. The epicenter lay between the capital city of Kathmandu and a small town called Pokhara, flattening the villages completely with no soul left alive.
Old people and some other women, child, so they are getting sick, and we are not getting medicine and some rescue and support for us. So even in the open space we are living here, it's very terrible.
Nepal and the surrounding areas have continued to experience aftershocks. People are still being pulled out from the rubble more than 6 days after the tragedy. Hospitals are unable to cope with the huge numbers of people in need of the medical attention. Thousands in Kathmandu have been spending their nights outside, too afraid to go back to their houses. Water, food, electricity are in short supply, and there are fears of outbreaks of the disease. The situation is critical in the remote rural regions towards the epicenter of Saturday's quake.
We want goodwill and support from the international community to rebuild our nation. This is a big loss to the economy. The countryside has been devastated. Once this phase is over, the need for massive rehabilitation, reconstruction will be required.
Villages around the epicenter are very difficult to reach, cut off by landslides, and the bad weather has been hampering helicopter access. Prime Minister Sushil Koirala has warned the toll could reach 10,000.
राष्ट्रिय विपत्तिको यस दुःखद घडीमा भूकम्पबाट जीवन गुमाउनु हुने समस्त नेपाली दिदीबहिनी तथा दाजुभाइहरू र विदेशी नागरिकमा भावपूर्ण श्रद्धाञ्जली व्यक्त गर्दछु। उहाँहरूका स्वजनहरूमा हार्दिक संवेदना प्रकट गर्दछु।
The Nepal government has pleaded for overseas aid, everything from blankets and helicopters to doctors and drivers. Many countries have sent aid, including India, China, the UK and the US. But there is a logjam at the Kathmandu airport, with individuals trying to fly out of the country while flights of aid and rescue teams wait to land. Almost the entire Nepalese army and police have joined the search and rescue operations. With the death toll rising each day and the number of injured just countless, the picturesque country and its people will perhaps take years to come out of the trauma which has left them scarred for years. With Bureau Inputs, Rajya Sabha TV.
Nepal is one of the poorest nations of the world and perhaps will take a long time to rebuild. But the geography of the nation is such that it's quite prone to earthquakes. It sits on the boundary of two massive tectonic plates. Let's now take a look at this graphic which will show you how the collision between the tectonic plates takes place and how actually the disaster took place in Nepal.
A little before noon on Saturday in Nepal, a chunk of rock about 9 miles below the Earth's surface shifted, unleashing a shock wave described as being as powerful as the explosion of more than 20 thermonuclear weapons that ripped through the Kathmandu Valley. In geological terms, the tremor occurred like clockwork, 81 years after the region's last earthquake of such a magnitude in 1934. Records dating to 1255 indicate the region known as the Indus-Yarlung Suture Zone experiences a magnitude 8 earthquake approximately every 75 years. The reason is the regular movement of the fault line that runs along Nepal's southern border, where the Indian subcontinent collided with the Eurasia plate 40 million to 50 million years ago. The collision between India and Eurasia occurred as the so-called India plate is pushing its way north towards Asia at a rate of about 5 centimeters or 2 inches a year. Geologically speaking, that's very fast. As the plates push against each other, friction generates stress and energy that builds until the crust ruptures. In the case of Saturday's earthquake, the plate jumped forward about 2 meters or 6.5 feet. Saturday's earthquake was also relatively shallow, according to the US Geological Survey. Such quakes tend to cause more damage and more aftershocks than those that occur deeper below the Earth's surface. After an earthquake, the plates resume moving and the clock resets.
Earthquake in Nepal has had a huge impact on India, killing more than 70 people across several states. Bihar has been the worst hit, accounting for almost 51 deaths, Uttar Pradesh 12, West Bengal 2 and Rajasthan 1. The quake and aftershocks that followed have left another close to 300 people injured. Remember, India has launched a massive relief operation in Nepal. As part of Operation Maitri, has even air-dashed teams of senior officials from various ministries to coordinate the relief work. Let's now cut across live to my colleague Amritanshu Rai, who is in Nepal tracking the developments from the disaster-hit nation. Amritanshu, what is the latest death toll? As Prime Minister Koirala had said that it could go beyond 10,000. What are your sources telling you?
As of now, the figure, the death toll is between 5,000 to 6,000 persons. But the number of injured is quite high, which is above 10,000. And the government is expecting the death toll to go up further. 1934, the death toll for a similar intensity earthquake was around 8,500. But this time, the situation is likely to be much worse, and the expectation is that it will touch the 10,000 toll figure. Yeah.
But Amritanshu, there is a lot of international aid which is coming in. What is the government doing to coordinate all this aid, as there were reports saying that much of it is not reaching out to the people in the rural areas?
There are two aspects to the international aid, not trickling down to the person needed, person who needs it on the ground and last man in the line. The reason is twofold. First is the infrastructure choking at various points. So the highways are clogged at various places, and so is the only airport, that functional airport which can land big aircrafts. That is the Kathmandu airport. So the Nepal government is inundated with relief material, but is not being able to manage it because the infrastructure required to absorb and supply this kind of relief material to the needy is not really at its best performance. The second fold is the political leadership is not as strong as it should be because of a coalition government in place. So the leadership could have taken several determined stands, which unfortunately it has not been able to take, and that is also one of the reasons why the relief material is not reaching to the needy.
Right.
Yeah.
But Amritanshu, if I could ask you, where are you exactly right now, and have you been really able to go to the villages which are near the epicenter? What's the latest situation there?
Rasua is one place, and there are several other villages around the place, the ground zero, so to say, where the epicenter was, that is where the maximum devastation has actually happened. So two places. Kathmandu has also seen the maximum number of death toll. So Kathmandu is the third place where it has affected. We've not had a chance to travel out because it is taking 7 to 8 hours to travel to villages, and the helicopter services are so busy ferrying the needy and providing relief and evacuating people that there is not much space left on the aircraft to carry media persons. So yes, as of now, I'll be stationed in Kathmandu, and this is where I will be able to get you maximum information from.
Right. Thanks, Amritanshu, for bringing those updates. You take care of yourself. We'll come back to you for more on this. There are 7 tectonic plates which comprise the bulk of the continents and the Pacific Ocean. And there are smaller plates as well which do not figure on the plate map, which are called the tertiary plates. An Indian plate is a tertiary plate. Now let's take a look at how the Indian plate is placed on a seismic map and which are the sensitive zones of India. Take a look at this report.
The Earth's structure has 3 parts: an outer silicate solid crust till about 30 kilometers from the surface, a viscous mantle 2,900 kilometers thick below the crust, and a core 3,500 kilometers diameter at the center. The uppermost part of the mantle and the crust is broken into 7 major tectonic plates: African, Australian, Eurasian, North American, South American and Pacific. The motion of these plates against each other causes earthquakes. The Indian plate, which is part of the Indo-Australian plate, is moving in a north-northeast direction and colliding with the Eurasian plate. The Himalayas came up as a result of this movement. The collision has resulted in the formation of many fault lines along the region, which has made it highly susceptible to earthquakes. According to the Indian Meteorological Department, the Bureau of Indian Standards has grouped the country into 4 seismic zones, from Zone 5, the most active, to Zone 2, the least active. Zone 5 consists of parts of Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Rann of Kutch, parts of North Bihar and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. The remaining parts of Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Delhi, Sikkim, northern Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and West Bengal, parts of Gujarat and small portions of Maharashtra near the west coast and Rajasthan fall under Zone 4, a severe intensity zone.
Welcome back. You're watching our special report along the fault line. Now, normally any disaster gets attention only after a strike, though crores of rupees are put into planning and strategies, but how much of it is really an integral part of our development planning? Our reporter Ranshu gives you a complete lowdown on this.
Natural calamities in Kangra, Shillong, Mandi and now Nepal. The National Disaster Management is having its hands full fighting multiple hazards, which have imposed a need to strengthen its programs. The government has put 17 vulnerable states under watch, while the National Disaster Response Force itself is adding 2 more battalions for deployment.
Main crux lies at the district level. So that is where we are impressing upon the states that every district in the country should have a very responsive district disaster management plan, and they should carry out their own mock drills and rehearsals to ensure that the community is made aware and they are able to respond to a kind of situation. So that is where our focus is going to be. I am happy to say that the government has sanctioned raising of 2 more NDRF battalions. As of now we got 10, so we are going to have 12 NDRF battalions.
When it comes to preparedness and mitigation of risk, experts feel India still lags far behind other nations.
In terms of prevention and long-term mitigation, I think we are still lagging way behind. And that's where countries like Japan that you mentioned have learned from earlier earthquakes. The 1964 earthquake in Tokyo was a huge lesson that helped them look at construction technologies, that helped them look at the techno-legal regime and be very strict about its implementation.
India's geographical size and huge population are the biggest challenge to manage disaster risk. According to the report of the Overseas Development Institute, India would have the greatest exposure to extreme weather and natural disasters by 2030. The report highlights lack of seismically secure infrastructure and buildings in the northeastern region.
As far as the vulnerability for earthquake is concerned, so there are various bylaws, there are certain regulations which are there to ensure that these buildings are earthquake resistant, resilient, and the construction agencies have to follow those instructions.
The government has budgeted around $5 million to fight disasters from 2010 to 2015. But despite the resources, disasters get attention only after they strike. Planning and preparing strategies to tackle them in an effective manner needs to be an integral part of our development planning. Anshu Jesing for Rajya Sabha TV.
So it's very clear that India needs still to learn a lot as far as earthquake preparedness is concerned. Let's now take a look at the building safety aspect in India. Structural engineer and real estate developers assert that high-rise buildings constructed in India can withstand earthquakes that are expected to hit that particular seismic zone. India has been divided into 5 seismic zones. However, its national capital, Delhi, falls into category 4, that is the second highest level in terms of vulnerability to earthquakes. Though high-rise may withstand the quakes, but experts caution that sizable parts of our cities are extremely vulnerable due to unauthorized and unregulated construction.
April 25, 2015, a 7.9 magnitude earthquake devastates large parts of Himalayan neighbor Nepal, killing thousands, reducing hundreds of buildings to rubble. The cracks on these modern high-rises reveal the vulnerability of modern structures to nature's fury. It also raises fears on the safety of high-rise buildings in India as the country has embarked on a massive urbanization drive in the last 10 years. Developers assure people about the safety of these tall buildings, but a word of caution for buyers as well.
It is necessary to see that the building's plans are approved or the completion certificate is issued. Further, he wants to ensure whether the buildings are earthquake resistant or not. He can ask the particular certificate or the structure drawings from their developers.
High-rise towers have come to dot almost all major Indian cities and even smaller towns. On Saturday and Sunday, though, a sense of fear raged among residents of these buildings as they were jolted by the big earthquake and then the aftershocks. Developers emphasize on training and awareness drives to avoid damage and injury.
जब अर्थक्वेक होता है तो उस दौरान हमको क्या करना चाहिए या क्या नहीं करना चाहिए, ये डेफिनेटली एक बहुत बड़ा एक एजुकेशन का सवाल है कि लोगों को उस बारे में जानकारी होनी चाहिए. तो अभी चूंकि ये नेपाल के अंदर एक बड़ा हादसा हुआ है, तो इस तरह के हादसे से कैसे लोगों को मतलब अवेयर कराया जाए, हम लोग उसके लिए एक अपने कंसल्टेंट द्वारा और अपने जो हमारे पास जो उसकी जो इस स्ट्रक्चर के बारे में जो हमको राय देते हैं, हम उनके द्वारा एक मॉक ड्रिल तैयार करेंगे और अपने आरडब्ल्यू के माध्यम से और जो लोग वहाँ रहेंगे उनको इस बात के बारे में जानकारी दी जाएगी कि इस टाइम में किस तरह से बिल्डिंग से एवैक्यूएट किया जाए.
By design, these structures are earthquake resistant. This is also verified by the layout approving authority and may be vetted by the IITs. However, no government agency actually verifies whether norms are adhered to during the construction process. Developers frequently hand out construction contracts without sufficient checks.
It is kind of a grey area. In fact, there are PMC agencies, project management consultants. These agencies take care of the fact that whatever is specified in the drawing is followed on site. And most of the good developers employ PMC agencies these days. And the work of these PMCs agency is whenever the project construction is going on, their team of engineers and other paraphernalia, they would be on the site 24/7 kind of. And they would make sure that the quality norms are adhered to.
Structural engineers assert that the biggest threat from a strong earthquake is not to modern skyscrapers as they follow sound designing principles. They say unauthorized construction faces the maximum risk.
There can be some norms created, simple norms, which can be given to the residents, all the people in every city, that these are the norms to be followed when they construct their own building. Because these buildings are normally a single story or at the most a 4-storied building. Wherever the stilt is being also done, that is another grey area, because the moment you go on for a stilt parking, the probability of earthquake failure increases.
There's no ruling out the prospect of a strong earthquake striking Delhi, as the Delhi NCR region falls in seismic zone 4, the second most vulnerable category. All the more so, only stringent compliance to sound designing principles and quality construction, coupled with training and awareness to the residents, can prevent loss of life and property. Krishnanand Tripathi's report for Rajya Sabha Television.
Now, the recent earthquake in Nepal has awakened schools and hospitals in India to the need for emergency drills readiness in case of natural calamities. Many are in the process of implementing measures to be taken in case a disaster strikes. But are we really ready as far as our schools, hospitals and malls are concerned? Anshu takes you through this reality check.
With a rapidly increasing population and infrastructure, most parts of India are vulnerable to catastrophic disasters that could lead to major damage. Though regulations for schools and hospitals are in a constant state of improvement, many institutions are trying to set an example with efforts to create awareness among students and staff in case of an emergency like an earthquake.
It involves your search and rescue. It involves your first aid and it involves your fire safety. So they get trained in these three things mainly, where they are exposed to different modes and different methods of how to carry it out according to the international standards.
Duck, cover and hold, and then you go under your desk, because if anything falls down, the desk will protect you. And then when all the braking stops, you go outside and line up in the field.
While going down, we have to keep away from the railings, because railings fall first. So we have to stick to the walls. That's the protocol we follow, and our teachers guide us to the field. When we reach over there, there's a roll call, and we find out which people are missing. Then with adult supervision, we come into the building and check all the classrooms again.
Every natural disaster like the Nepal earthquake teaches us new lessons, extending to evolution of structural designs, construction equipment and engineering innovations. Besides educational institutions, hospitals that deal with thousands of people on an everyday basis face the need for strong and effective architecture as well as designed evacuation programs.
We have our complete various codes in place, and the standard operating procedures for them are in place. These codes are properly defined, and who is to play what role, right from the housekeeping to the nursing staff to the doctors, the security personnel, and who's going to be communicating with the outside world. Sometimes it happens to be police and the local administration authorities. So all this has been defined.
For the building to be structurally safe is very important. The other is about our own preparedness. So there is the standard international system of duck, cover, hold. So as soon there is some shaking, you need to follow that drill. So that is in terms of that awareness as human beings we should be following.
Evacuation responses of many such buildings have improved with the help of fire services and other local authorities. Simulation exercises and drills are conducted at regular intervals.
We do quarterly drills for all our tenants, our customers, our employees, everybody. And this is not just internally, but we do it as a complex with the external agencies. We do it with the fire people, we do it with the ambulance, we do it with the traffic cops. So we involve all of them, and we do once a quarter an evacuation drill.
Even though several agencies provide assistance, disaster management capacity, faster response depends largely on local community and people at large. It's also up to the management of such buildings to ensure all measures are taken well in time. Anshu Singh for Rajya Sabha TV.
Though millions of homes have been displaced and thousands killed in the Nepal quake, but as after every tragedy, the survivors here as well have begun to pick up the threads of life to move on. And the task of rebuilding the nation through collaborative efforts is now the toughest challenge. Time for us to wrap the show. Our deepest condolences to the bereaved families, and we at Rajya Sabha TV extend our prayers to all in Nepal and other places who have been impacted by this disaster. Goodbye and thanks for watching.